You ever wonder what betrayal really feels like? Not the TV drama kind. The real thing, the kind that robs you in broad daylight while you're praying for your child to survive. I can tell you, because I lived it. And when the truth came out, the door blew open. They went pale, and I smiled. It wasn't about the money they stole. It was about watching them crumble under the weight of their own greed, right there in that lakeside cabin where they thought they'd won. My name is Rachel Monroe, and I haven't slept in 4 days. The ICU has this particular smell antiseptic mixed with fear that clings to your clothes, your hair, your soul. I've been living in this plastic chair beside my son's bed, watching machines breathe for him, counting each mechanical rise and fall of his small chest. Logan is 9. Was 9. No, is 9. Present tense. He's still here, still fighting. The accident happened so fast. One moment he was walking home from school. The next, he was being loaded into an ambulance, his backpack still strapped to his shoulders, Spider-Man patches stained with blood. The doctors use words like critical and touch and go. They speak in percentages and possibilities, never promises. I've memorized every beep of his monitors, learned to read the nurses' faces for signs of hope or worry. My world has shrunk to this 10 by 12 room, where time moves differently each hour, stretching like taffy, each day blurring into the next. It was during one of those blurred moments, somewhere around 3 in the morning, that I finally checked my phone. The battery was dying, like everything else seemed to be. Emails from work at Northline Design Studio had piled up, but I couldn't bring myself to care about kitchen renovations and tile selections when my son's life hung by threads thinner than the samples in my abandoned office. But there was something else, a notification from my bank that made my blood run cold. Unusual activity detected? With shaking fingers, I logged into my account. The screen loaded slowly, too slowly, and when it finally appeared, I thought I was hallucinating from exhaustion. The balance showed $47.16. That couldn't be right. I had $850,000 in that account. Years of savings, my father's life insurance, every bonus and commission I'd scraped together, Logan's college fund, our safety net, our future. I refreshed the page, same number, $47.16. My hands trembled as I scrolled through the transaction history. There it was, time-stamped at 11:43 the previous night, a wire transfer for the entire balance, $850,000, gone in a single electronic heartbeat. I called the bank's 24-hour line, my voice cracking as I explained. The representative was sympathetic but firm. The transaction had been authenticated from a recognized device. Security questions had been answered correctly. As far as they were concerned, I had authorized the transfer myself. But I didn't, I whispered, staring at Logan's pale face. I've been here. I've been right here. The representative suggested I file a fraud report, gave me a case number, told me someone would investigate. Her words sounded hollow, like she was reading from a script she'd recited 1,000 times before. I hung up and stared at my phone screen until it went dark. $850,000, every penny I had in the world beyond the checking account that held this month's bills, gone while my son fought for his life, while I sat helpless beside him, while the machines kept their steady rhythm. Someone had waited until I was at my most vulnerable, most distracted, most broken. Someone who knew my security information, who had access to a device the bank recognized, someone I trusted. The realization hit me like ice water. There were only 2 people who could have done this. 2 people who knew where I kept my passwords, who'd helped me set up the security questions years ago, who I'd foolishly given emergency access to my accounts. My sister Melissa and her husband Eric. The same people who'd been oddly absent since Logan's accident, sending only a brief text about being busy with renovations at their cabin. The same people who'd been making increasingly desperate comments about their business ventures failing, their investment losses mounting. I looked at my son's face, at the tubes and wires keeping him alive, at the bills that would soon start arriving. The rage that filled me was unlike anything I'd ever felt before. It wasn't hot or wild. It was cold, precise, crystalline in its clarity. They'd stolen from me while I sat vigil over my dying child. They'd taken everything while I prayed for one more day, one more chance, one more moment with my boy. I kissed Logan's forehead, careful not to disturb the monitors, and whispered, "I'll be back, baby. Mommy has something she needs to take care of." The drive to the cabin took 3 hours, but rage made it feel like minutes. My hands gripped the steering wheel until my knuckles went white, the speedometer climbing higher than it should have on those winding Michigan roads. Pine trees blurred past my windows as I rehearsed what I would say, what I would do, how I would make them understand what they'd taken from me. The cabin sat on the shores of Lake Charlevoix, a sprawling log structure our father had built with his own hands. Warm light spilled from every window, and I could hear laughter floating across the evening air. They were having a dinner party. While my son lay unconscious in a hospital bed, while I lived on vending machine coffee and borrowed hope, they were entertaining. I didn't knock. This had been my home too, once. The door opened to reveal a scene from a magazine candle-lit table, crystal glasses catching the light, the smell of roasted lamb and expensive wine. 8 faces turned toward me, their conversations dying mid-sentence. Melissa sat at one end in a new dress I'd never seen before, diamonds glittering at her throat. And there, at the head of the table where our father used to sit, was Eric. He looked good, relaxed, a man without worries, raising a glass of what I recognized as Dad's vintage Bordeaux, the bottles we'd promised to save for special occasions. "Rachel," Melissa's voice pitched high with false surprise. "What are you doing here? How's Logan?" I ignored her, my eyes locked on Eric. He set down his wine glass with deliberate slowness, a smile playing at the corners of his mouth like he'd been expecting me. "Where's my money, Eric?" The words came out flat, controlled. Someone, I think it was our cousin Janet, gasped. Eric leaned back in his chair, that infuriating smile growing wider. "Your money, I'm not sure what you mean." $850,000, transferred out of my account last night at 11:43 while I was watching my son breathe through a machine. That's a serious accusation. He took another sip of wine, savoring it. Maybe you should check your records. Stress can make people confused. "Don't." My voice dropped lower. "Don't you dare." Melissa wouldn't meet my eyes. She stared at her plate, pushing food around with her fork. "Rachel, this isn't the time." "When is the time?" "Melissa, when Logan needs surgery I can't afford, when the hospital bills bankrupt me, when—" Eric stood slowly, commanding the room like he always did. 6'3", broad shoulders, the kind of presence that made people listen. "We needed it more than you," he said simply, like he was explaining something to a child. "The business was underwater. We were going to lose everything." The casual cruelty of it stole my breath. Around the table, our relatives shifted uncomfortably, but no one spoke up. No one defended me. "My son," I started. "Has insurance," Eric interrupted. "You have a job, you'll manage, you always do. But we had real obligations, investors, loans, adult responsibilities." Melissa finally looked up, and for a moment I thought I saw guilt in her eyes. "Don't make this about you, Rachel," she whispered. "We're family. Family helps each other." Family. The word tasted like ash. "You stole from me while my child was dying." Eric laughed then, actually laughed, and addressed the table. "Listen to her. So dramatic. This is why we don't usually invite Rachel to these gatherings. She can't handle money, never could. Remember when Dad had to bail her out of that credit card debt in college? That had been $2,000, 20 years ago. I'd paid Dad back every penny." "Poor planning on her part," he continued, warming to his audience. "Single mother, no saving strategy, probably spending it all on toys and video games for the kid. We did her a favor, really. protecting the family assets. A few people chuckled nervously. Our Aunt Margaret nodded along like Eric was making sense. These people who'd known me since birth, who'd celebrated my successes and mourned my losses, were buying his performance. I stood there in my rumpled clothes, 4 days of hospital vigil written across my face, and watched my family choose their side. The message was clear: Eric and Melissa belonged here, with their dinner parties and investment talk and casual cruelty. I was the outsider, the one who didn't quite fit, the single mother who'd made poor choices. "I want my money back," I said quietly. Eric's smile was all teeth. "Prove it was yours." That's when I noticed at Dad's Hamilton watch glinting on Eric's wrist, the one with the inscription on the back, "To Rachel, my brightest star. Love, Dad." The one that had disappeared from Dad's room after he died. I turned and walked out, their laughter following me into the night. But I wasn't broken. I wasn't defeated. I was just getting started. I didn't leave. Not yet. While Eric held court in the dining room, regaling his audience with stories of his business acumen, I slipped through the cabin's familiar hallways. My feet knew every creaking board, every corner where shadows gathered. This place held my childhood, my memories, my father's ghost. Dad's study was at the end of the hall, supposedly locked, but I knew about the trick window push-up, slide right, and the latch would give. Eric and Melissa had changed so much about the cabin, but they'd left this room untouched, like a museum to the man they'd robbed. Everything was as he'd left it. The desk with its green banker's lamp, the walls lined with his engineering books, the smell of his pipe tobacco still faint in the air. My throat tightened, but I pushed the grief down. There would be time for tears later. I went straight to the filing cabinet, knowing exactly which drawer to check. Third down, labeled Legal Documents. My hands shook as I pulled out the folder marked Last Will and Testament. The will I remembered had been simple, everything divided equally between Melissa and me. Dad had shown it to us both, made sure we understood his wishes. But the document in my hands was different. This will was dated 3 months after Dad's death. My blood turned to ice as I read. According to this version, I'd been completely disinherited. Everything, the cabin, the investments. His company shares all went to Melissa and Eric. The reason given was my financial irresponsibility and inability to properly manage assets. But the real shock was the signature. It looked exactly like Dad's, down to the way he crossed his T's with that distinctive flourish. Except for one problem: the date. Dad had been dead for 4 months when this will was supposedly signed. I pulled out my phone and took photos of every page, my hands steadier now that I had purpose. Then I searched deeper in the cabinet. Bank statements, investment records, transfer documents. All of them painted a picture of systematic theft, assets moved and sold, accounts drained. And there, in a manila envelope marked Personal Effects, I found the receipt. One Hamilton watch, cleaned and serviced 2 weeks after Dad's funeral, paid for with Eric Vaughn's credit card. "Found what you're looking for?" I spun around. Eric stood in the doorway, no longer smiling. Behind him, I could hear the dinner party continuing, oblivious to our confrontation. "You forged his signature." It wasn't a question. He stepped into the room, closing the door behind him. "Prove it." He was dead. Eric, dead when this will was signed. "Clerical error. Happens all the time. The lawyer will swear he witnessed it months earlier. Amazing what people remember when you pay them enough." The casual admission of bribery shouldn't have surprised me, but it did. And my inheritance. "What inheritance? You were written out. Says so right there in black and white." My father would never. "Your father was a businessman," Eric interrupted. He understood that assets need to be protected, invested properly, not frittered away on. He waved his hand dismissively. "Whatever it is you do, playing with fabric samples, picking out throw pillows." The contempt in his voice was naked now, the mask completely gone. This was the real Eric, the one Melissa had married, the one who'd spent years planning this theft. You took everything, I said quietly. The money, the cabin, even his watch. Eric's hand moved unconsciously to his wrist. He gave it to me, before he died, said I was the son he never had. The lie was so bold, so cruel, that it took my breath away. Dad had inscribed that watch for me on my 18th birthday. He'd worn it every day until the cancer took him. "Get out," Eric said, his voice dropping to a growl. "Get out of my house before I call the police. Breaking and entering is still a crime, even for family." "This isn't over." "Yes, it is." He opened the door, gesturing for me to leave. "You can't fight this, Rachel. I have lawyers. I have documentation. I have your sister. What do you have a sick kid and empty pockets?" I walked past him, the photos safe on my phone, my mind already working through the next steps. In the hallway, I passed Melissa coming out of the bathroom. She froze when she saw me, guilt written across her face. "How could you?" I whispered. She looked away. "Eric knows what's best. He's smart about these things." "He's a thief, and you helped him." "He's my husband." She lifted her chin, trying for defiance. "And he's right. You never were good with money. Remember in college." "Don't!" I cut her off. "Don't you dare justify this by bringing up ancient history. You stole from your nephew, from Logan, while he's fighting for his life." Something flickered in her eyes, shame. Maybe, or just annoyance at being reminded. Logan will be fine. Kids are resilient. The callousness of it, the easy dismissal of my child's suffering hit harder than Eric's cruelty. This was my sister, who'd held Logan as a baby, who'd promised to always be there for him. I left without another word, but I took something with me. Not just the photos or the knowledge of their crimes. I took the certainty that they'd underestimated me. They saw a single mother, exhausted and broke, someone they could push around and rob blind. They didn't see what I really was, a woman with nothing left to lose and everything to fight for. As I drove away from the cabin, I made a mental list: lawyer, police, FBI if necessary. And somewhere in that list, a plan began to form. They wanted to play games with documentation and forgery, fine. I knew how to play games too. The next morning came too soon. I'd spent the night in the hospital chair again, dozing fitfully between Logan's monitors and my racing thoughts. When my phone buzzed at 7:30, I almost ignored it. Then I saw Melissa's text. "Family meeting at the cabin, 10 a.m. Don't make this harder than it needs to be." I kissed Logan's forehead and told the nurses I'd be back by noon. The drive to the cabin felt different in daylight, less desperate, more calculated. I'd had time to think, to process, to prepare for whatever new humiliation they'd planned. The driveway was full of cars. They'd summoned the whole family: aunts, uncles, cousins, even Great Aunt Helen, who rarely left her house, an audience for my degradation. They were all gathered in the great room, arranged like a tribunal. Eric stood by the fireplace, a manila folder in his hands. Melissa sat on the couch, flanked by our aunts. The rest filled every available seat, their faces ranging from curious to uncomfortable to coldly judgmental. "Thank you for coming. Rachel," Eric began, like he was conducting a board meeting. "We thought it best to clear the air about these accusations you've been making." I remained standing near the door. "They're not accusations. They're facts." Eric smiled that practiced smile and opened his folder. "Actually, I think you'll find the facts tell a different story." He pulled out a document and held it up for everyone to see. "This is a loan agreement, signed by you, dated 6 months ago, $850,000, to be invested in our Michigan Commons Development Project." I stared at the paper, at the signature that looked exactly like mine. The room seemed to tilt. "That's not possible," I said. "I never signed that." "Your signature says otherwise." Eric passed the document around the room. "You came to us, actually, said you wanted to be part of the family business, wanted to make your money work for you instead of sitting in a savings account." Uncle Robert examined the paper with his reading glasses. Looks legitimate to me. Because it's forged. The words came out louder than I intended. Just like Dad's will. Just like everything else you've fabricated. Eric shook his head sadly. Rachel, I understand you're under stress. Logan's situation, the medical bills. But you can't just demand your investment back because you've had second thoughts. That's not how business works. She always was impulsive, Aunt Margaret murmured. Remember when she dropped out of her master's program? To take care of Dad when he was dying, I shot back, while you were all too busy to help. Eric pulled out more papers. Bank records showing the transfer, email correspondence discussing the investment, your enthusiastic response to the projected returns. Each document passed from hand to hand, building his case. You were excited about this opportunity. Rachel, you said it would secure Logan's future. I watched my family study the evidence, saw doubt creeping across their faces. Eric had prepared thoroughly, crafted a narrative that painted me as a willing investor who'd simply gotten cold feet. The emails are from an address I don't use, I said. The signatures are forgeries. Check the dates I was in the hospital with Logan when half of these were supposedly sent. Actually, Melissa spoke for the first time, her voice steady. You weren't? Logan's accident was last week. These documents are from months ago. The precision of their lie was breathtaking, every detail thought through, every potential objection anticipated. Why would I invest everything I had? I asked the room. Every penny of my savings. What kind of mother would risk her child's future like that? A mother who wanted more, Eric said simply, who thought she deserved a bigger piece of the family pie, who was tired of being the poor relation. That's ridiculous. Is it? He turned to address the family. We all know Rachel struggled financially. Single motherhood isn't easy. When she came to us with this proposal, we tried to talk her out of risking everything, but she insisted, said she was tired of watching everyone else succeed while she scraped by. I saw heads nodding. They were buying it. The struggling single mother, desperate for a windfall, making a reckless gamble. It fit their preconceptions too neatly. I have photos, I said desperately, of the forged will, of documents proving. Photos can be doctored, Eric interrupted smoothly. But legal documents, properly notarized and witnessed, those are much harder to fake. Cousin Janet shifted uncomfortably. Maybe we should let lawyers sort this out. We're trying to avoid that, Eric said, all reasonableness. Family shouldn't sue family. We're willing to work out a payment plan, despite the fact that investments carry risk. We could return a portion of the principal over time, once the project starts generating revenue. How generous, I said, my voice dripping sarcasm, offering to return a fraction of the money you stole. That we invested per your signed agreement. Eric's tone hardened. But if you prefer to make wild accusations, hire lawyers you can't afford, drag the family through public scandal, well, that's your choice. Just remember, Logan needs stability right now, not a mother consumed by lawsuits and bitterness. The threat was subtle but clear. Fight us, and we'll make sure you look like an unfit mother. Several relatives were already looking at me with concern, wondering if the stress had pushed me over the edge. We're done here, Eric announced. Rachel, you have the documents. Review them with a lawyer if you like. You'll find everything is in order. People began to stand, eager to escape the uncomfortable scene. A few relatives patted my shoulder sympathetically as they passed, but no one met my eyes. No one offered to help. As the room emptied, Melissa approached me. It didn't have to be like this, she said quietly. If you'd just asked for help instead of making demands. I didn't make demands. You stole from me. She sighed like I was a difficult child. Everything is always so black and white with you. Isn't it no room for nuance? No understanding of how the real world works. She left me standing alone in the great room where we'd once opened Christmas presents, where Dad had taught us to play chess, where a family had existed before greed poisoned it all. But I wasn't as alone as they thought. and I wasn't nearly as beaten. They'd won this round, turned the family against me with their carefully crafted lies, but they'd also shown their hand. Now I knew exactly how far they'd go, exactly how much they'd prepared. Time to prepare some surprises of my own. The ICU waiting room had become my second home. I was slumped in the corner chair, studying the forged documents on my phone for the 100th time, when someone sat down beside me. I didn't look up until I heard a familiar voice. "That was quite a performance yesterday." Clara, my younger cousin, the quiet one who usually faded into the background at family gatherings. She was holding 2 cups of coffee. Real coffee, not the bitter swill from the vending machine. "You were there." I accepted the cup gratefully. "In the kitchen. I heard everything." She glanced around the waiting room, then leaned closer. "Eric's lying. I know he's lying." My heart skipped. "How?" Clara pulled out her phone, scrolling through videos. "Remember Eric's birthday party last month, the one at that pretentious whiskey bar downtown?" I shook my head. I'd been working late, trying to land a major client for Northline Design. Well, I was there, and Eric got drunk. Really drunk." She found what she was looking for and lowered the volume. "He started bragging about this big score he was planning. Listen." The video was shaky, filmed from across a table littered with empty glasses. Eric's voice was slurred but clear. "6 months from now, I'll be set. Got it all figured out. That savings account just sitting there, doing nothing." She signed everything like a good little fool. Trusting family, that's her weakness. Someone off camera laughed. "What are you talking about?" "Rachel's nest egg. $850K, just waiting to be put to better use. Already got the papers drawn up. She won't even know until it's too late." The video cut off. I stared at Clara, my coffee forgotten. "I thought he was just drunk talking," she said, "making up stories. But then yesterday, when he showed those documents..." She shrugged. "I'm not good at confrontation. Never have been. But I couldn't just sit there knowing what I know." "Clara, this is..." I struggled for words. "This could change everything. Would you testify, tell the police?" She bit her lip. "I can't. I'm sorry, Rachel, but I can't go public with this. My parents, they're invested with Eric too. My college fund, their retirement. If I burn that bridge..." She trailed off miserably. I understood. Clara was 22, still dependent on her parents, still finding her footing in the world. "Can I have a copy of the video?" "That's why I'm here." She airdropped it to my phone. "But there's more. I have a friend from college, Damian Cole. He's a forensic accountant, works freelance investigating financial fraud. He's really good at what he does, helped expose that embezzlement scheme at Detroit Municipal last year. I can't afford... He owes me a favor. Big one. I tutored him through statistics when he was about to fail out." Clara pulled out a business card. "He's expecting your call." I looked at the card. Damian Cole, certified fraud examiner. The first ray of hope I'd felt in days. "Why are you helping me?" I asked. Clara was quiet for a moment. "Because I remember when Uncle James was dying, everyone else was too busy. But you were there. You gave up grad school, moved back home, took care of him. And at the funeral, when Eric was already eyeing the cabin like a vulture, you were the only one who spoke about who Dad really was, not just what he owned." She stood to leave, then paused. "And because I'm tired of watching Eric and Melissa treat people like stepping stones, someone needs to stop them." After she left, I called Damian Cole immediately. His voice was professional but warm. "Clara filled me in on the basics," he said. "This kind of fraud is more common than you'd think. Family members, forged documents, manufactured paper trails. The good news is, criminals like your brother-in-law usually make mistakes. They get cocky." "Can you prove the signatures are forged?" "Possibly, but forensic document examination takes time and money. What I can do quickly is trace the digital footprints, email headers, IP addresses, metadata on electronic documents. If Eric created these forgeries, there'll be traces. I have photos of everything. Bank records, the will, the supposed loan agreement. Good. Send them all. But Rachel, I need you to understand something. Proving fraud is one thing. Recovering stolen money is another. If Eric's already spent or hidden the funds. I understand. I looked through the window at Logan, still unconscious, still fighting. I just want the truth out there. I want everyone to know what they did. Then we'll make that happen. Clara saved my academic career. I don't take that debt lightly. Give me 48 hours to do preliminary analysis. In the meantime, don't confront Eric again. Let him think he's won. Overconfident criminals make the best targets. After we hung up, I sat in the waiting room with my cooling coffee and felt something shift inside me. For days, I'd been reactive, shocked, angry, desperate. But now I had allies. I had evidence. I had a plan forming. Eric thought he'd isolated me, turned the family against me, left me with no options. He thought I'd crumble under the weight of Logan's medical crisis and financial ruin. He thought wrong. I walked back to Logan's room and took his hand. "Mommy's going to fix this," I whispered. "I'm going to get back what they stole from us. And then I'm going to make sure everyone knows exactly who they really are." Logan's fingers twitched slightly in mine. The first movement in days. The monitors showed no change, but I felt it. My boy was still fighting. So was I. 2 days later, Damian Cole walked into the hospital cafeteria looking like a man who'd discovered gold. He slid into the seat across from me, his laptop bag heavy with evidence. "Your brother-in-law is an idiot," he said without preamble. "A greedy, overconfident idiot who left digital breadcrumbs everywhere." My coffee cup froze halfway to my lips. "What did you find?" Damian opened his laptop, angling it so I could see. "Let's start with the emails. The ones supposedly from you agreeing to the investment. They were all sent from the same IP address, Eric's home office. He didn't even bother using a VPN. He pulled up a spreadsheet. The metadata on the loan documents shows they were created on Eric's computer, using his licensed copy of Adobe. The electronic signature lifted from a birthday card you signed for Melissa 3 years ago. I found the original on her Facebook. He used a birthday card. Scanned it, isolated your signature, cleaned it up in Photoshop. Amateur hour. Damian clicked through more files. But here's the smoking gun. Remember that $850,000 transfer. It went to an account at Wolverine Capital Trust. Guess whose name is on that account? Eric's. Better. It's registered to Vaughn Enterprises LLC, which was formed exactly 1 week before the transfer. Eric is the sole member. He didn't even try to hide it through shell companies or offshore accounts. I stared at the screen, seeing my entire case laid out in digital clarity. This is enough for the police. More than enough. But wait, there's more. His fingers flew across the keyboard. I did some digging into that forged will. Turns out the lawyer who supposedly witnessed it. He was disbarred 2 years ago for wait for it document fraud. Eric hired a disgraced attorney to help forge your father's will. Can we prove Eric hired him? Already did. Found payment records. $5,000. Transferred 2 days after your father's death. Damian leaned back, satisfaction clear on his face. Your brother-in-law thought he was playing 3-dimensional chess, but he was really just leaving evidence everywhere. So what's our next move? First, we document everything. I'm creating a forensic report that any prosecutor could follow. Then you need to decide, do you want to go to the police first, or confront Eric with what we know? I thought about Logan upstairs, about the mounting medical bills, about the humiliation of that family meeting. What would you do? Damian smiled. I'm a fraud examiner, not a strategist. But if someone stole from me while my kid was in the hospital, I'd want to see their face when they realized they'd been caught. The police can wait an extra day or two. You think I should confront him? I think you should give him one chance to make this right. Wire the money back. Confess to the family. Whatever satisfies your sense of justice. If he refuses, and he probably will, then you have everything documented for criminal charges. I nodded slowly. But I can't just walk in there with a laptop full of evidence. He'll deny everything, probably destroy records. Oh, which is why we're going to be smarter. Damien pulled out a small device. Digital recorder, completely legal in Michigan as long as you're part of the conversation. Get him talking, get him confident. Men like Eric love to brag about how clever they are. And if he doesn't take the bait, then you pivot. Tell him you know about Vaughn Enterprises, about the disbarred lawyer, about the IP addresses. Watch him scramble. The guilty always panic when you have specifics. We spent the next hour strategizing. Damien would compile everything into a comprehensive report, ready for law enforcement. I would arrange another meeting at the cabin, this time on my terms. One more thing, Damien said as we prepared to leave. The video Clara gave you, I enhanced the audio. Eric mentioned something about putting the watch where it belongs. I'm guessing that's significant. My father's Hamilton watch. He's wearing it now. Claims Dad gave it to him. The one inscribed to you. At my nod, Damien made another note. Theft of property worth over $1,000 is a felony in Michigan. Just another charge to add to the list. As we stood to leave, he handed me a flash drive. Everything's on here. Make copies. Hide them. If anything happens to the original files, you'll need backups. Damien, I don't know how to thank you. Thank Clara. And when this is over, nail Eric Vaughn to the wall. Guys like him give financial advisors a bad name. That evening, I sent a text to Melissa. We need to talk. All of us. The cabin. Thursday at 2 p.m. Tell Eric to clear his schedule. He'll want to hear what I have to say. Her response came quickly. More drama. Haven't you embarrassed yourself enough? Just be there, unless Eric's too afraid to face me without an audience. I knew that would get to him. Eric's ego wouldn't let him appear weak, especially to Melissa. He'd show up, probably with more forged documents, more lies, more smugness. But this time, I'd be ready. This time, I had the truth on my side. And a recording device in my pocket. Logan's condition had stabilized over the past few days. The doctors were cautiously optimistic. He'd need months of recovery, therapy, surgeries, but he was going to make it. So was I. Thursday couldn't come fast enough. Thursday arrived gray and cold, fitting weather for what was about to unfold. I'd sent messages to the entire family, framing it as an urgent meeting to resolve the financial dispute once and for all. The same relatives who'd witnessed my humiliation would now witness the truth. The cabin's great room was packed when I arrived. Eric had positioned himself by the fireplace again, trying to claim the power position. Melissa sat nearby, her face tight with annoyance. The aunts, uncles, and cousins filled every seat, their expressions ranging from curious to hostile. Thank you all for coming, I began, standing in the center of the room. The recorder in my pocket was already running. I know you think you've heard the whole story. You haven't. Eric sighed dramatically. Rachel, we've been through this. The documents are legitimate. Your accusations are backed by evidence. I pulled out my phone, connecting it to the TV Eric had installed last year. Let me show you what a real investigation uncovered. The first slide appeared Eric's IP address logs. Every email supposedly from me about the investment sent from Eric's home computer. Same IP address. Every time. That proves nothing, Eric said, but his voice had lost some of its confidence. You could have used my computer. At 3:17 a.m. while I was at the hospital, I clicked to the next slide. Here's the metadata from the loan agreement. Created on your computer. Eric, using your software license. Murmurs rippled through the room. I kept going. The electronic signature was lifted from this. I showed the birthday card from Melissa's Facebook, a birthday card I signed 3 years ago. Forensic analysis confirms it's a digital copy, not an original signature. Melissa's face had gone white. That's not possible. It gets better. The next slide showed Vaughn Enterprises LLC. The $850,000 went here. An LLC formed 1 week before the theft, registered to Eric Vaughn. Not even a good attempt at hiding it. Now wait a minute. Eric started forward, but I held up my hand. I'm not done. I played the enhanced audio from Clara's video. Eric's drunken voice filled the room. She signed everything like a good little fool, trusting family that's her weakness. The room went silent. Several relatives turned to stare at Eric. But the crown jewel, I continued, is this. The disbarred lawyer's record appeared on screen. The attorney who supposedly witnessed Dad's will after he died lost his license for fraud. And here's the payment record, $5,000 from Eric, 2 days after Dad's funeral. You're twisting things, Eric said, but sweat had broken out on his forehead. Taking things out of context. Am I then explain this context? I pulled up the will. Dad died on March 15th. This will is dated June 20th. Hard to sign documents from the grave. Aunt Margaret gasped. Uncle Robert stood up, his face red with anger, but not at me this time. You told us she was lying, Robert said to Eric. You made us think Rachel was trying to take advantage. She is, Eric's voice cracked. This is all fabricated, manipulated. By a certified fraud examiner. I clicked to Damien's credentials. Someone with no stake in this except professional integrity. You could have paid him to say anything. With what money? Eric, you stole it all. That's when I pulled out the flash drive. Everything is documented here. Every forged document, every fraudulent transfer, every lie. Copies have already been made. One is in my lawyer's safe. Another is with the fraud examiner. And if I don't walk out of here with either my money or a confession, a third copy goes to the FBI tomorrow morning. The room erupted. Relatives shouted questions. Accusations flew, and through it all, Eric stood frozen by the fireplace. But I wasn't done. Oh, and Eric. I pointed to his wrist. That watch you're wearing, the one inscribed to Rachel, my brightest star, I have the purchase receipt. Dad bought it for my 18th birthday. That's theft of property over $1,000. Another felony to add to your collection. Eric's hand moved instinctively to cover the watch. You can't prove. I can prove everything. I turned to address the room. This man stole from me while my son was dying. He forged our father's will. He turned you all against me with lies and fabricated evidence. And he did it with such arrogance, such certainty that I'd be too weak to fight back. I looked directly at Eric. You were wrong. The silence stretched taut. Then Melissa spoke, her voice barely a whisper. Eric, tell them she's wrong. Tell them you didn't. Shut up, Eric snapped at her, and in that moment, his mask finally slipped completely. So you're not denying it? Uncle Robert asked. Eric's jaw worked. He looked around the room, seeing the faces of people who'd believed him, supported him, trusted him. Now those same faces showed disgust, betrayal, anger. I want my money back. I said simply, every penny, today, or tomorrow morning. You'll be explaining this to federal investigators. I don't have it all, Eric said finally. I invested it. The project. The fake project, or the gambling debts, or the boat you bought last month. I'd done my homework. I don't care. Find it. Borrow it. Sell whatever you need to sell. $850,000 in my account by 5 p.m. That's impossible. Then I guess I'll see you in court. And in prison. I started toward the door. Behind me. The room exploded again. Relatives demanding answers. Melissa crying. Eric shouting about entrapment and manipulation. I paused at the threshold. One more thing. Dad would be ashamed of you both. He built this family on trust and love, and you destroyed it for money. I hope it was worth it. As I walked to my car, I heard Aunt Margaret's voice rise above the chaos. Give her the damn money back, Eric, before we all end up visiting you in federal prison. I sat in my car for a moment, hands shaking with adrenaline and relief. The recording device was still running, capturing Eric's meltdown, the family's fury, the complete destruction of his carefully crafted image. My phone buzzed. A text from Clara. Heard the shouting from outside. How did it go? I texted back, the door blew open. They went pale. and I smiled. The knock came at 4:47 p.m. I was in Logan's hospital room, reading him Harry Potter even though he was still unconscious. The doctor said he might hear me, might find comfort in familiar voices. I'd just reached the part about the sorting hat when the sharp rap echoed through the cabin. Not the hospital room, the cabin. I'd driven there after leaving Logan with the nurses, some instinct telling me this was where it would end, where it had all started with family gatherings and trust and love that Eric had poisoned with his greed. The knock came again, harder this time, then another, then pounding. I opened the door to find Detective Morrison and 2 other officers standing on the porch. Behind them, more police cars were pulling into the driveway, their lights painting red and blue shadows across the evening snow. "Ma'am, we're looking for Eric Vaughn," Detective Morrison said. "We have a warrant for his arrest." "He's inside," I said, stepping aside. "In the great room, with about 20 witnesses." The detective's eyebrows rose slightly, but he nodded to his officers. They moved past me with practiced efficiency. I followed, wanting to see this through to the end. The family gathering had devolved into chaos. Some relatives had left, unable to stomach the truth. Others remained, voices raised in anger and recrimination. Eric stood cornered by the fireplace, Melissa sobbing on the couch while Aunt Margaret lectured them both about family honor. Everything stopped when the police entered. "Eric Vaughn." Detective Morrison's voice cut through the noise. "You're under arrest for wire fraud, identity theft, forgery, and theft of property exceeding $1,000. Eric's face went from red to white in seconds. "This is ridiculous! I want my lawyer!" "You'll have plenty of time to call them." The detective nodded to his officers, who moved forward with handcuffs. "Turn around, sir." "Wait," Eric said desperately. "I can explain. It was a business arrangement, a family matter." Rachel agreed. "Save it for your attorney." Morrison cut him off. He looked at me. "Ms. Monroe, we'll need you to come to the station tomorrow to give a formal statement. Bring all your documentation." "It's all here," I said, handing him a copy of the flash drive. "Everything you need?" As the officers cuffed Eric, he turned to look at me. The arrogance was gone, replaced by something between fear and rage. "You destroyed everything," he hissed. "The business, the family, everything." "No," I said calmly. "You did that. I just made sure everyone knew about it." They led him out through the front door, past the mounted deer heads and family photos, past the memories of better times. The relatives parted like a sea, some looking away, others staring in shock. Melissa tried to follow, but an officer stopped her. "Ma'am, we'll need to speak with you as well. You're not under arrest at this time, but you may want to contact an attorney." She looked at me then, tears streaming down her face. "How could you do this to us?" "Oh, how could you do it to me?" I countered. "To Logan, he's 9 years old. Melissa, 9. And you stole his future while he was fighting for his life." She had no answer to that. None of them did. As the police cars pulled away with Eric in the back of one, the remaining family members stood in awkward silence. Uncle Robert was the first to speak. "Rachel, I owe you an apology. We all do. We should have listened." "You should have," I agreed. "But you didn't. You chose to believe the comfortable lie over the uncomfortable truth." "What happens now?" Aunt Margaret asked. "With the money. The FBI will freeze Eric's accounts. There'll be a process for recovering stolen assets. I'll get back what I can." I looked around the room, at these people who'd been so quick to judge me. "As for the family, that's up to all of you." I left them there to sort through the wreckage. There was somewhere more important I needed to be. Back at the hospital, I found Logan's room transformed. The machines were still beeping, but something had changed. As I entered, a nurse smiled at me. "He's been showing more signs of responsiveness. The doctor thinks he might wake up soon." I took my usual chair and picked up where I'd left off in Harry Potter, but I'd barely read a paragraph when I felt it a squeeze. Weak, but definite. "Logan." I leaned forward, heart pounding. "Baby, can you hear me?" His eyes fluttered. opened, focused on my face. "Mom." The word was barely a whisper, but it was the most beautiful sound I'd ever heard. "I'm here, baby. I'm right here." Was I sleeping? For a little while. But you're awake now. Everything's going to be okay. And for the first time since this nightmare began, I truly believed it. Eric would face justice. The money would be recovered, maybe not all, but enough. Logan would heal. We would rebuild. As I held my son's hand and felt him squeeze back, I thought about what real wealth meant. It wasn't numbers in an account, or property deeds, or inherited watches. It was this moment, this connection, this fierce love that had driven me to fight when everything seemed lost. Eric had been wrong about me. I wasn't weak because I trusted family. I was strong because I protected mine. The door to Logan's room opened, and Clara peeked in. "I heard about Eric," she whispered, "and I heard Logan's awake." I nodded, smiling through tears. "Want to say hi to your cousin?" As Clara entered, followed by a few other relatives who'd stayed to check on us, I realized something had shifted. The family that Eric had tried to turn against me was finding its way back. Not all of them, and not easily, but it was a start. Logan smiled weakly at his visitors, and I squeezed his hand again. We'd lost money, we'd lost trust, we'd lost innocence about what family meant. But we'd found truth, we'd found justice, and most importantly, we'd found our way back to each other. The door had blown open, they'd gone pale, and in the end, I'd done more than smile. I'd won. Thank you so much for listening to my story. I'm curious to know where you're listening from. Please leave a comment and let me know what country or city you're tuning in from so we can connect. If this story resonated with you, please subscribe to the channel and share your thoughts below. I'd love to hear what you think about family, betrayal, and justice. What would you have done in my situation?